Well, this is the first Sunday of Advent, and there are two main seasons of preparation in the Christian calendar. The first is Lent, as we prepare ourselves for the death and resurrection of Jesus before Easter. And then we have this season, Advent, where we prepare ourselves for the joy of the presence of Jesus. And that sense of preparation, that sense of joy for the presence of Jesus, that informs our series this Advent, our theme this Advent. We are going to be intentional about noticing the presence of Jesus around us as we prepare to celebrate his birth 2,000 years ago. Today, we are focusing on how we can notice Jesus' presence in the world around us. Our world might be a bit strange this year, but Jesus is still present within it. Our main reading today is from Mark chapter 13, verses 24 to 37. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds, with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at the cockcrow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. This is the word of the Lord, so thanks be to God. Well, every week, Pastor Carol or Eleanor will update our church's Joys and Concerns prayer list, and I have noticed something. Maybe you've noticed it as well. Have you ever noticed that the Joys section seems a bit smaller each week than the Concerns? Why is this? Is there always more wrong than right in the world at any given time? Does that explain it? Well, probably not. I believe the joys section is smaller than the concerns because we are prone to not noticing or not sharing the good news. If someone was sick and they get better, we often do not share that update. If you've ever been in one of my groups, you always know how we're going to start with highs, lows, and prayer requests. So one of the great benefits of doing that routinely and sending out those prayers each time we meet is that we get to see how things resolve or evolve over time. For example, a few weeks ago in our staff meeting, someone asked us to pray for a friend who was in the ICU and doing very badly after contracting COVID. The next week, he had made some improvement, but was still in rough shape. The next week, he was out of the ICU, but still needed a lot of monitoring and support. And now he is truly doing much better and on a good track. The weekly check-in gives us the opportunity to celebrate his progress from critical condition when we started praying for him to now celebrating him being on the mend. Now, sometimes it's also eye-opening to hear more details about something, and not just, tracking along with a story, but maybe you're aware of it, but you get to hear more details, and that can be eye-opening. For example, our children's director, Kate, dropped off Advent bags for my kids and other kids. She worked with Janice and Maria on the Christian Education Committee to deliver 22 bags and mailing 2 more. That's nice. But then I saw, inside these bags, there were 26 little activity bags to go along with with each day in each of the larger bags. So that means each of these 24 bags has 26 smaller bags within them. Doing a quick little bit of math, that means Maria, Janice, and Kate filled 624 little Advent activity bags and sent those to 24 kids. 624 little bags. That's amazing. A year or so ago, I sent out a thank you card to everyone who had volunteered in the community dinner over the year. And the cards that I signed were completely filled. The conference table that's in my office. Seeing that opened my eyes to the scale of the effort and the response of this congregation. All of these are examples of seeing the presence of Jesus. I mean, I intellectually understood that there were a lot of people involved in the community dinner, but seeing that table filled with thank you notes opened my eyes to the presence of Christ. I already knew that Kate and Maria and Janice delivered a bunch of Advent bags. But seeing that number, 624 little bags, that opened my eyes to the presence of Christ. I understand that God is active in our world today, but when I can see progress over the course of several weeks of prayer requests, that opens my eyes to the presence of Christ. We can use our eyes and our ears to intentionally notice the presence of Christ this Advent. In our text today, Jesus says, "Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory." Use your eyes to notice the presence of Jesus. And our first text from Isaiah says, "From ages past, no one has heard, no ear has perceived, no eye has seen any God besides you who works for those who wait for him." We can use our ears as well. So here are two ideas for seeing or hearing the presence of Jesus around you. First, the first idea is the follow-up. If someone asked you to pray about something, a week or two or a month ago, follow up with them. Ask them how it's going and how you can be praying for that now. You might get to see or hear about something amazing. Or you might see or hear a new and specific way to pray for the presence of Christ. The second idea, to use your eyes and ears to notice the presence of Christ, the second idea is kind of the same, but from the other direction. If you asked for prayers about something, let people know how it's going. Especially if it is resolved and prayers have switched from concern to joy. Make sure you let them know that. That will build up their faith as well. Then they get to see or hear the presence of Christ. Or they also get to update, if it has not resolved, they get to update specifically how they're praying for the presence of Christ. So one way we can notice the presence of Jesus in the world around us this Advent is to use our eyes and our ears. Jesus also encourages us to notice his presence in nature. He says, "From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near." But let's not miss what Jesus is saying in this specific instance about nature. He did not say, in this text, he didn't say, "From the fig tree, notice its beauty." No, he said, "From the fig tree, learn its lesson." To notice the presence of Jesus in nature, I'm going to encourage you to go a little bit beyond beauty. Beauty is fine. That's a great start. But for this Advent season, we're trying to learn its lesson, not just notice its beauty. For example, I've been intentionally spending time outside in our yard, trying to do it as often as possible, every day if possible. I even got a camping hammock. The nice thing about a camping hammock is you can string it up and take it down very quickly. I've timed myself. It is 4 minutes for me to get the hammock up, and I can take it down in about the same amount of time. That is key for me, because if I left a hammock up, my boys would destroy it in about 3 days. So I got to take it up, put it up, and take it down. So I go outside, string up the hammock, put the technology away, and I sit, and I watch, and I think, and I pray, and I try to notice the presence of Christ around me. At the beginning of the fall, I noticed something about two of the trees in our backyard. They're both the same species. They live only about 15 feet apart, and yet one of them had lost most of its leaves, while the other one had barely lost any. As I reflected on those two trees having, different reactions to almost identical circumstances, I realized that that could be a metaphor for our spiritual journeys. Even two people in the same household could have very different spiritual journeys, different reactions to almost the exact same circumstances. From that realization, I started talking with our staff and our church leaders about considering individual people within our church rather than just thinking about groups or attendance. Instead of just asking how many people came, we'll want to know that, but instead of stopping there, we're trying to ask, well, how can we best support John or Mary or, insert your name here in their spiritual journey, because you are your own tree. So we're actually going to start something new this week. The staff are picking 5 households, and we're going to reach out to them to check in and make sure we know what's going on in their lives and how we can best pray for and support them. 5 households. But then we're going to do it again. And then we're going to do it again. And then we're going to do it again. And then we're going to do it again. We are going to devote intentional time to considering the spiritual journey of individuals within our church. And then we're going to try to work our way through the whole church this way. We want to know how connected you're feeling right now. We want to know how you're investing in your spiritual journey right now. We want to know how you are serving others right now. We want to know how we can best pray for you or support you right now. And we also want to know not just the negative areas of your life, but what would make you happy. And make sure you notice that there's a key word and a key phrase in these questions. The key word is you, and the key phrase is right now. We want to know about you specifically right now, not someone else generically sometime. And we want to know this so that we can think not just about the whole congregation, but so that we can think about you. We're talking about this as like a person-centric ministry. Instead of asking how the program went, we're trying to ask how you are and how we can best support or bless you. When we get one of these, if you get one of these phone calls or emails or texts or however we check in with you over the next year, now you know what to expect. We want to cheer for you. We want to bless you. We want to support you. We want to pray for you because you are your own tree. That's one way I learned a lesson from nature. Didn't just see the beauty, I learned a lesson. What lesson can you learn from thinking deeply about nature? That is another way to intentionally notice the presence of Jesus during this Advent season. Jesus also says in our text today, "Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all of these things have taken place." My great-grandmother used to say that that anyone who lives long enough will see all of the prophecies from the book of Revelation occur within their lifetime. It's one of the reasons there are so many groups who think that the end times are right around the corner. Like throughout history, there have been so many of these groups. They've all been wrong so far, but there are so many of these because there are always enough signs and wonders to believe you're living in the end times. Thinking about this, another way to notice the presence of God is actually through history. When have prior generations faced similar challenges? Solomon reminds us in the Bible that there is nothing new under the sun. The details will change, of course, but people are kind of similar at any point in history. The things that motivate us are fairly similar throughout history. One of the people I follow online is Brady Shearer. He starts off his videos with the same tagline, helping churches navigate the biggest change in communication in the last 500 years. Now, what's he talking about? Well, the internet, of course. But it raises another question. What happened 500 years ago? What was the last major shift in communication technology? Any guesses? Well, the invention and proliferation of the printing press. Suddenly, books could be manufactured quickly and cheaply. Suddenly, literacy could be a core skill for everyone, not just the privileged knowledge of a few. Suddenly, Identical ideas could actually be shared broadly across an entire continent. And suddenly, that change in communication technology helped Martin Luther, John Calvin, and other reformers overturn Western Christianity and the political map of Europe. As that shift in communication wound its way through Western Christianity, what changed? Well, instead of only professionals, reading and interpreting the Bible, everyone could have access. Instead of watching a priest practice the religion behind a curtain, now everyone was a potential vessel for the grace of God. Instead of learning Latin to read the Bible or even understand your church service, now there were local language translations to make it more accessible. The Word of God came down in flesh in Jesus. The Word became accessible widely because of the printing press. How will our world and how will Christianity be different as a result of our own major shift in communication? That's still working itself out. But we've seen some of how it can be a useful medium for ministry during this pandemic. But we can also derive comfort by seeing how prior generations survived and sometimes even thrived through the last shifts, in major communication. We can also look at past generations who survived pandemics. We can look at past generations who struggled with political deadlock or difficult debates about race or debates about the nature of justice or economic uncertainty or demographic shifts. All of these things have happened in the past. Pick something that worries you, and I can just about guarantee that a past generation has dealt with it in some form. Again, the details will be different each time, but people are pretty similar across the sweep of history. Our motivations, our emotions, our personal struggles, they're very similar to people hundreds or even thousands of years ago. If you are anxious about something, especially in the big picture right now, take a look at history. See how a past generation dealt with something similar. Because we're still here. A future generation is going to look up what we did to survive or thrive during this time. We can see the presence of Jesus in history. Sisters and brothers, no matter what is going on around us, Jesus is present. We can use our eyes and our ears. We can think deeply to learn lessons we can find in nature. See Jesus' presence that way. We can notice Jesus' presence throughout history in past generations and derive comfort or lessons from that. Jesus is present right now. How will you notice? We'll close with what Jesus said to end our text today. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at the cock crow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. What I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. Amen.